Hey guys, it's Q&A Tuesday and I'm here with my crystal ball because I have a feeling that I may need it to answer a lot of your questions. You keep asking me to look into the future, so I'm glad Ian got me this thing. Starting today with a question from UT or QT23. Congrats, Roman, on the article. You're referring to the preface that I wrote in Giorgio Armani's book. Hey, just one thing. I heard from herself, Giorgio Armani. She said that she takes a watch and if it's not on time, date correct, it doesn't matter, and just wears it. I did not like the statement, to be honest, coming from a well-respected woman in the watch world. I did not took it good. So what's the message to the new watch people then? Don't care about time, just about the metal or a piece of jewelry. We as collectors, I think, like to set a watch every time, we wear it, etc., etc. And to find out she doesn't care about this, I just don't understand it. Any thoughts? Saludos from Mexico. I'll tell you, I often find myself not setting a time I will watch as well. Not because I don't want to or I don't respect watches or I think that they're jewelry. It's because the amount of times we tend to change our watches on our wrists, right? I sometimes find myself wearing 2-3 different watches a day while I'm in the office, whether because I'm doing Instagram, because I just feel like changing the watch out, or I've come in with one watch, leave to the house with the other, just because I have the opportunity to play with a lot of watches. I love watches, right? This is not just a business, this is also a passion, right? And I think when it comes to Georgia, I think it's more of the same. Maybe she misworded herself, not realizing what kind of a message that sends. I see Georgia often enough, and for the most part, her watches are usually set. And she does change her watches, much like underwear as well. She has a humongous collection, specifically while running her social media business. So oftentimes it's, hey, let me throw this watch on, snap a picture of it. I'm gonna keep wearing it, but I forgot to set the time on it, put it back, put another one on. So I think it's more of that. I wouldn't hold it against her. I don't wanna seem like I'm defending her, but that's probably the reason why that has happened, and she just probably didn't choose her words carefully. But I would agree with you in the message that would send if the watch is not set. I sometimes get caught by my friends saying, hey, what time is it? I look at my watch and I'm like, oh crap, it's not set, and that's not because I didn't want to set it purposely and I treat it as a piece of jewelry. It's because I literally forgot to set it, and that's really what it comes down to. Hope that clarifies the situation somewhat. Did not need a crystal ball for this question. Let's move on. Leslie Medi is asking me, what would be the top 3 best, smartest Datejust models to buy nowadays in your opinion? I'm gonna give you one, and that one is going to be the Datejust 2 41 millimeter. Any dial combination doesn't really matter, with the gold bezel, which would be the fluted bezel, not the flat bezel. And again, today, based on the market values of some of the other stainless steel pieces out there, you don't have a whole lot of options for a brand new watch under $10,000. And that's one of those watches. If you go to the plain Jane bezel, that's not the white gold bezel, it's even less money, it's just not as attractive. As far as to go back, any Datejust, any regular Datejust out there, your smartest and cheapest buy is going to be anything two-tone, because they tend to trade the cheapest, especially some of the older stuff dating back, let's say 10 years on a bracelet, on a Jubilee bracelet. It's not smart to buy a small Datejust today, brand new, because they will tank in value. They just are sort of that lowest line of Rolex that, historically, yeah, it holds its value, but you're not gaining any value, and for the most part, you're still going to lose a few points when you go to resell it, just because of how many of them out there. You go to one of my trade shows and you look for a pre-owned Datejust, it's like, you have hundreds and hundreds of them in the room, just because there were just that many made. The best deal you're going to get on one is going to be a regular Datejust in a two-tone pre-owned. Hope that answers your question. Question from E10 Dude. Hey Roman, besides trends, what was the reason for such a big increase in popularity in stainless steel sports watches over the last few years? I found it a bit interesting that vintage stainless steel Rolex is the same, if not more expensive than a yellow gold Rolex Day-Date. Have we reached an era where metal in a watch doesn't much matter anymore? Also, could you dive in a bit about the Bark Finish Rolex Day-Dates? Thanks. I know Richard Mille is the one brand out there that doesn't differentiate between metals, right? If you look at their RM11s, for example, the price difference between the titanium and the gold is so slim. Richard Mille was that one person that when he came out with his watches, he said, you know what, my watches are going to be bought for what they are. Horological machines, machine on your wrist, as he dubs it. And just because the watch is gold, there's no watch out there really that can justify its price in gold versus its stainless steel counterpart, right? So, and they're really the only brand out there that's doing this. I mean, they're selling TBT watches, seemingly plastic watches, for same amounts of money as they're selling their gold versions of the same watch, right? Or with a tiny slight difference. Where if you go to any other brand like a Rolex, you know, you look at a retail price of a steel GMT versus a gold one, there's a $20,000 difference, right? And rightfully it should be, because this is a precious metal watch. But even still, if you break it down, the amount of gold in any watch out there at 18 karat will never, ever even remotely come close to the value of the watch or the retail price set on the watch, right? Stainless steel has always been something that's been super appealing to collectors. And I don't know why. I don't have an answer for that. I don't see an answer in there either, to be honest with you. I think originally it came from modesty, if I had to guess. You can have a $500,000 stainless steel Rolex on your wrist and nobody would ever know. It's less flashy, and yet it's still as expensive or more expensive than its gold counterparts. I think some of the stuff had to do going back in regards to how many pieces were released. You know, some brands, not counting Rolex, a lot of brands like Patek Philippe, they shied away from making stainless steel watches. You only have a few in a lineup. Lange & Son just came out with its first sports steel watch, right? And if you go down a list of a lot of these brands, majority of the lineup was gold watches, because that was the only way that they were able to justify, before the internet times, you know, an expensive price of a watch. Well, it's a gold watch. Well, it's a platinum watch. Well, it has diamonds on it. Where stainless steel watch was sort of like a cheaper option. So therefore, if you go back, a lot of these brands made less stainless steel watches than they did gold watches. And of course, then the market flipped over with Rolex, again, not including, because Rolex has always made stainless steel watches, but they were cheap stainless steel watches. And also you have to consider the fact that how strong was the market today versus 30, 40, 50 years ago, before the internet, where you didn't really have the kind of demand. Not that many units were sold physically, right? If you combine the two together, that's when you come in, okay, well, wait a minute, some of the older stuff seems like the steel stuff was more scarce than, let's say, the gold stuff. If you want to talk about day dates, 5 or 6 years ago, day dates were hot. Certain dial variations were hot. Certain years were hot where they made less of than they did of the other. In a year's time, I saw the day date market of certain models, especially like the Stella dials, some funky diamond dials that they only made a few of. Even the Bark Finish Rolex day dates that you mentioned, you know, even those went up. But the market quickly cooled off on them. And the reason it quickly cooled off on them, because the older day dates were smaller, especially in comparison to the Day Date 2, which is much larger and it's more significant on a wrist. And at the end of the day, the Day Dates, no matter how many variations you can put on it in terms of dials, it still seems to seemingly the same watch over and over. You have the same president bracelet, right? Well, you have the Bark Finish one, obviously, that was like a one-off thing. But for the most part, it's the same exact bracelet. It's the same exact dial configuration, the date, the day, and the hours and the minutes, right? And there was just not a whole lot of variations outside of different dials when it came to day dates. Again, different color metals, yellow gold, rose gold, tri-doors. You had a few variations when it comes to metal. For the most part, it didn't have those intricacies, all those tiny little differences that you will find in a Submariner or a GMT, such as different bezel, different hour markers, different writing on the dials. The day date presence has always seemingly stayed the same, and I feel that was the downfall of that particular market. And as far as your Bark Finish, yeah, I figured you would do that. It's not a popular day date, and the reason for that is because majority of clients as well as dealers find that finish to be extremely unattractive. And it is not a watch that's going to go through the roof anytime soon. It is not a watch that's popular. It's not a watch that one would actually get a call from. I don't remember, if ever, somebody calling in here and say, hey, I want to get that day date with the Bark Finish. And when we're at trade shows and somebody has one in their showcase, it gets overlooked majority of the time. Hope that answers your question. I was waiting for somebody to ask me this next one. David D. HK. Hi, Roman. Not sure if my question got deleted as well since you mentioned the follow-up in the case. Thanks. Yeah, I told you guys that at some point I lost a lot of questions in the Word document that I usually keep them in. So thanks for re-asking. What are your thoughts on the Bell & Ross BR05? It seems like a hybrid of the Royal Oak, Nautilus, Pam put together, except maybe the skeleton model. Would you consider this is somewhat a bootleg copy of its original or an alternative if you can't afford a Royal Oak Nautilus but love the overall look? What do you think of companies who try to alter and enhance others' original design and put their twist on it. Will this hurt their own reputation or build a new market for themselves? Thank you and keep up the hard work. Well, let's go to bellandross.com to the BR05 collection. Starting with the plain Jade BR05A, the stainless steel with the black dial. They did a black dial, they did a gray dial, they did a blue dial, and they did a gold version of it. And then, of course, there's the skeleton, right? Right off the bat, that is a damn near half and half bracelet of Royal Oak and Nautilus. If you look at the middle links, it's a Nautilus. If you look at the overall design of the bracelet and the way the links are shaped and the way they get to the case, it's a Royal Oak. As far as the bezel is concerned, they sort of got away from their typical almost perfectly square bezel, and they went to a bezel that's sort of tapered on the outside. That's very Audemars Piguet. Finishes, very much reminiscent of AP, just the same. You have these lines in the bezel, and then you have these bevels that are highly polished, and the angles are polished a certain way. Had they polished, I can't tell from this picture, I've never had one of these in person, if the center links are polished. If they are center polished, then it's all Nautilus, right? Bell & Ross has kind of been dead in the water for a while, right? I remember going back probably 10 years ago, Bell & Ross was selling well. It was a good brand. It had a nice gimmick in terms of pilot watches, right? Some stuff to do with aviation. They had a lot of cool limited editions. I think one of my favorite was like the radar watch that they did. Oh, I'm sorry, the sonar watch that they did. It sort of looked like a sonar screen from a submarine, right? I like a lot of their instrument panel type watches, right, for pilots. And it literally looked like it was something that was taken off the cockpit of an airplane. And it was very appealing to those that are fans of aviations and military watches in general. And then Bell & Ross was doing well, and then the crisis hit, and it kind of fell off like many, many other brands. It's very difficult to reinvent yourself when you're a gimmicky type company, when your entire lineup is consistent of pilot type, instrument panel type watches, where seemingly they all look the same, much like Panerai, right? Or Romain Jerome for that matter, right? The Titanic DNA watches, they made so many different ones of those that, you know, at some point, when do you say enough is enough? Bell & Ross did a lot of closeouts. I've had a lot of Bell & Ross closeouts that I bought and sold for pennies on a dollar, right? Mostly wholesale, some retail. And then, you know, when the company says we really got to reinvent ourselves, this is what they came up with. They rounded the case a little bit. They took elements from other popular watches. Do I blame them for doing that? No, not really. Everybody in the business does it. You'd be surprised that some of the big boys definitely bite off some of the smaller watch companies out there just the same. Because look, at the end of the day, a watch designer is a watch designer, and they're very much influenced by others that are out there. It's like, try to invent something new today, right? You know, the guy that came out with the little umbrellas that go into a cocktail, right? You know, it's very hard to go and reinvent that, you know, because a lot of the inventions to date, and I'm talking about physical invention, I'm not talking about technological advances. All those physical things that are made today, it's been there, done that kind of thing. So when you're somebody out there trying to come out with a new product, it's extremely difficult. I got a buddy who was in the toy business. He just reintroduced the Cabbage Patch Kids. Remember, those were pretty popular back in the day. And he told me himself, it's like, it's very hard to come up with that next hit, you know, in the toy industry. And it's just the same when it comes to watches. And a lot of these designers out there are very much influenced by others. Hence, you see the influence in the bracelet, you see the influence in the finishes, you see the influence in the shapes. From the side, the case itself is like a Royal Oak. It's crazy how much similarity is here. So they did bite off quite a lot. $4,900. Not a bad price, especially if you get out there and buy it at 30, 35 off, you got yourself a deal. So it is definitely a cheaper alternative. The gold retails $32,000, hefty price tag. Even if you're buying this watch at 30 off, that still is going to put you at that $20,000 price range. Lots of alternatives out there for $20,000 that I'm sure a lot of people would pick, right? Let's go to the skeleton finally, and the skeleton, $6,400, where I feel is the bigger bang for your dollar. But the only thing is, I'm not too crazy about how the skeleton is executed. I feel that a skeleton watch should be a lot more refined, and by refined I mean it should be not as rugged. If you look at the details of the skeleton, you'll notice that the parts are just too thick. I feel that a skeleton watch, the bridges and everything else within the watch should be a lot thinner, a lot more refined, because that's, to me, that's what a skeleton watch stands for. Even the AP Royal Oak skeleton, if you look on the inside of it, it looks very refined, thin and light, yet the model is still sporty. But for $6,400, if you can get out there and get this watch at 30% off, I think it's a lot of bang for your dollar when it comes to this particular watch. In general, they did create a lot of hype in the market with that watch. Everybody and their mother made fun of it on Instagram. You know, a lot of buzz was created. But you know what they say, all publicity is good publicity, whether it's good or bad. And I guarantee, even from the bad publicity that this may have got, from all those haters that said, oh, this looks like that and it looks like that, it's a hybrid between this, that, and the other, there were a lot of buyers among those haters, because at the end of the day, that watch doesn't retail for a whole lot of money. It's affordable and it's attainable, unlike some of the other things that they're going after, like the Nautilus or the Royal Oaks or the Skeletons and things of that nature. So if I'm going to give them a C- on reinventing themselves, I'd be curious to see how well they do with these, how many of them they make, because if they make less of them, it'd be much better for them. Otherwise, these were going to end up being closeouts, much like some of their older stuff that's still sort of floating around the internet. Hope that answers your question. Here's another one that I guess I must have lost, from Tam Ayo Idawu. Hey Roman, I sent this question earlier. You said you'll answer, but you said you lost questions while traveling this video. If you don't mind, I'll ask again. What are your thoughts on factory diamond watches? Why do watch enthusiasts seem to be against it? Aren't they better than aftermarket diamond watches? For instance, when Mayweather purchased the $18 million Jacob & Co. Billionaire, which I think is amazing, I would purchase if I could afford it. I noticed a lot of watch enthusiasts weren't pleased and bashed them for it. It's a question of taste, and when it comes to diamond watches out there, I have seen work done on an aftermarket watch that rivals that of the manufacturers. Manufacturers tend to pay through the roof for the labor aspect of things, especially when you're talking about baguette watches. They tend to pay through the roof for the diamond product itself, because they only buy top quality product. But that's what results in these perfect blinged out watches, as you want to call them. The Jacob & Co. Billionaire is an amazing watch. Start with the fact that these are baguette invisibly set diamonds, which means you have to first find all these diamonds to match, right? In color, in clarity, and so on and so forth, which is not an easy task to begin with. You're going to uppay for that. Then you have to find somebody that can put that collection together and actually have the vision to be able to see, hey, I'm going to be able to cut these diamonds to fit in a certain way to come up with that flawless design of invisibly set baguette diamonds, which is the hardest thing to do today. You literally have to cut each diamond to fit next to each other. It's a big deal. I'm not going to get into the process of that. A lot of the aftermarket stuff that's out there is plainly shit. And the reason for that is because it's a way of getting the price down on a particular product, or most of the time, a way of getting the margins up on the particular product. You get out there and buy loose diamonds, you can pay anywhere from $150 a carat to $1,500 a carat, depending on the quality of the diamonds, how well they're matched up, and how good they call it a collection is, right? So if you're out there wanting to make a quality product, you can get out there and spend, let's call it $600 a carat, right? And let's say you're putting about 10 carats into a watch. Let's call it a Datejust, right? Let's say you picked up a Datejust 2, brand new. You paid $8,000. You put $6,000 worth of diamonds in there, plus the labor. Lo and behold, by the time it's all said and done, you're going to be into that watch for about $15,000, and you're going to sell it for $16,000, $17,000. I can take that same exact watch and I can spend $2,000, $3,000 on diamonds as well as work. Because diamond setters are not all the same. Some are good, some are better, some are not. There's diamond setters that will charge you 50 cents a stone. There are diamond setters out there that will charge you $2 a stone, and you get what you pay for. So I am not a big fan of aftermarket diamond stuff. I'm a fan of originally set diamond stuff, because with that you get consistency. Consistency across the quality of the diamonds, consistency across the craftsmanship of actually setting those diamonds. Whether they're regular diamonds or baguette diamonds or invisibly set diamonds, doesn't really matter. The craftsmanship and the standards that these companies hold when it comes to doing this stuff, which is often outsourced. I even know some of those companies that do work for major manufacturers. And sometimes when I want something done, I could use that company to say, look, make me this super beautiful baguette encrusted timepiece for a client, because I want the job to be top notch, and I will pay through the roof, and so will the client. You get what you pay for with this stuff. But the enthusiasts being against diamond set watches by the manufacturers, because they're comparing it to the stuff that's after set. The price of an after set watch versus the price of an originally set manufacturer watch, the difference in what they charge for diamonds, difference sometimes 5 to 10 times fold. So people are saying, well, why am I going to pay Jacob $18 million for this particular watch when I can have this watch made for $12 million or $10 million, hypothetically speaking, right? And this is where that controversy, I guess, comes from, a difference of opinion. This is one of the reasons a lot of companies are actually fighting the guys that put diamonds into their watches. Cartier did a huge thing where they sued everybody up and down 47th Street that had Cartier watches with aftermarket diamonds set in them. Rolex hasn't really done it yet. I don't think it should, because they understand what kind of a secondary market and what that does for their bottom line is when people buy these Rolexes and set them in diamonds, right? There's really no one-for-one after set diamond watches out there. For the most part, the original will differ in some way, shape, or form from that of an aftermarket piece, and you can quickly tell what's aftermarket set and what's not. The biggest point here is you also have to be somebody that likes diamond set watches, period. I love the watch that Mayweather purchased. He didn't pay $18 million for it, by the way. He paid less. But I love that watch. I would love to own that watch. I'm a diamond watch guy. You often guys see me wearing my diamond Royal Oak. I love it, and anytime I get a chance to put on a diamond watch, I put it on. The rest of what you're asking is just a difference of opinion. A lot of people are saying, well, I can get my guy to do this for $10,000 and the watch will look the same. It will not. There's very, very few guys out there that can do the job that the manufacturers do or these master craftsmen do. And if they do find somebody that does that type of job, it would become cost prohibitive. And for those that are doing it to make money on it, they tend to take a few shortcuts here and there just to increase their margins. Hope that answers your question. Next one is from King Trumper. Hi, Roman. I think mine may be one of those questions you lost. Again, another lost question, as it was way back on number 64. Oh, wow. Sorry. And you replied, we'll discuss. For ease of follow, here's what I wrote. Hi, Roman, great video as always. I have 4 Rolexes and love divers. I've recently seen a Sinn U1 on Stone Cold Steve Austin's wrist and like the look of it. I wonder what you think of Sinn as a brand. I'm not a watch snob, but given my collection is mostly Rolex plus a Speedy and a Tudor Ranger, my worry is that Sinn may not have the build quality that I'm used to. They said the reviews I have read about the submarine steel is good, as I want to dive with it. Apparently, the shine of my other watches may attract barracudas. You know that. Hence, looking at the U1. P.S. Since finding out you were answering my question, I've made my fiance watch every video with me, so please give a shout out to Laura Ann for letting me bore her with my passion for horology. Cheers. Big shout out to Laura Ann. If you sat through a bunch of my videos and you're not a watch person, kudos to you, and thanks by standing by your fiance and watching my videos. I appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about Sinn for a second. I will tell you right off the bat, not a lot of experience with Sinn watches. May have came across a few here and there that came across as a trade or something of that nature. Never really pursued purchasing and selling Sinn watches in bulk, I say, or a lot of them. I'm a big fan of German brands. Sinn, to me, is an equivalent of, a sports equivalent of, let's say, that of Union Glashütte, right? That slightly cheaper line from that little village Glashütte where Lang & Son and Glashütte watches come from, right? Well, first of all, as far as it being durable, it's very hard for me to make an opinion on something being durable or not if I haven't sold a lot of these things. The few that I have sold, I've never had any complaints. I've never had a Sinn watch come back. But again, it pales in comparison in terms of numbers of Submariners I've sold, which you can throw against the wall, they'll keep on ticking, versus Sinn watches. So it would be a fair assessment. What I love about Sinn watches, there's a website called watchbuys.com. They're an authorized dealer for a lot of German brands, Sinn included, right? And what they have there is they actually have verified owner reviews on a lot of the models that are out there. Let's look at the black one, right? That's not going to shine, and Barracudas won't eat you, right? If I scroll down and I look at the reviews, these are actual owner reviews, right? And some of the reviews, obviously, in regards to dealing with the company, and some of the reviews are actually owners talking about the watch itself. And believe me, don't take my word for it. If these are verified, legitimate user reviews on the watches, I don't think I've seen that anywhere, especially when it comes to what seemingly is an authorized dealer website, right, or a distributor of the watches, right? You know, reviews on my website, I get plenty of reviews on my website as well, but in reality, we can make them up. These don't seem to be made up. And we don't make up reviews, by the way. Going back to what I always say of buying what you like first and foremost, that's rule number one. If you like the watch, pick one up. I think the fact that Stone Cold Steve was wearing one of these attracted you to it. It works every time. The minute a celebrity puts a watch on their wrist, people pay attention. It actually works. As far as the use and as far as everything else, it's sort of a risk that you take. But I think for companies such as Sinn, from German manufacturers that do make quality products out there, I've yet to hear any bad things about Sinn or any other the lower price range German manufacturers where the quality was bad. Germans do stuff well when it comes to watches, when it comes to cars, among many other things. I would tell you to take a shot. Find a reputable dealer to buy from. One has a return policy, one that has a warranty, or just bite the bullet and pay retail from an authorized dealer. I think they're up there upwards of $2,000. What's the worst thing that can happen? If it doesn't work out for you and you got to resell it, you'll lose $300, $400, $500. Not that that's not a lot of money, but at least with a lower price watch, there's not a whole lot of risk in terms of loss. When I buy a funky watch and I bring it to the office, I show it to my partner, Arthur, who only wants to buy the latest and the greatest and the most sellable. And I show him, oh, look at this old Piaget that I bought. He gives me this look like, well, who the hell are you going to sell that to? You know, I'm like, well, listen, I spent $3,000. What's the worst thing that'll happen? I'll lose $3,000, right? So that's kind of it's supposed to be somewhat of a joke, but in reality, that's what it comes down to. So again, sorry for the delay in answering your questions. Another big shout out to Laura Ann. I'd be curious to hear from you. If you do go out there and do buy this, let me know how it worked out, especially after you went diving with it. Hope that answers your question. I'm gonna end with a good one from BBG Turbo. Roman, great show as usual. Question, who are the buyers who pay above retail? I'm collecting since 1991, and until recently I would not even pay at retail, but have a mandatory discount because of my history with the AD. When you speak 20K or higher above retail, all those people who I know who could easily afford those premiums, the least to buy above retail. I still cannot get my head around those who pay those premiums, but then your business is built on it. I fully understand supply and demand, but usually they would have their own AD history. Regards, Bjorn? I guess the J is silent, so Born or Bjorn? Sorry if I got your name incorrectly. Well, I think there's an answer in your question, a couple of answers within your own question, right? History with the AD. Not everybody has a history with AD. A lot of people have what's called new money. Young kids that made it big for one reason or the other, or kids that, let's say, their family is really well off. They inherited more money than they know what to do with, and they must have the latest and the greatest. There's plenty of people out there paying over list for a certain product simply due to the fact that they don't have a relationship with an AD like you do since 1991, right? Although I do have enough customers out there that have a relationship with an AD, as long as you have, and they get certain Rolexes and they get certain Pateks, but they can't get certain APs because they don't have that type of relationship. Or Richard Mille. Richard Mille hasn't been around long enough for somebody to have a 30-year relationship with them, right? Or some other newer brands out there, like some of these independents and so on and so forth. So yes, you can have a lot of relationships with ADs, but it has to be a particular AD for a particular brand that actually gets that particular product. Especially nowadays and age, we live in a world where the manufacturers are trying to cut out the middleman. They're trying to cut out the AD because they can do the business on their own via their boutiques, right? Mandatory discount that you get, I know that. I'm not an authorized dealer, and I have clients that have been with me for as long as I've been in business since I started this out of my basement, that till this day, oftentimes I won't make money on them because I can't bring them forth a good price based on some of the hot market. And I've told you before, I've even sold watches at a loss without them even knowing it, just because I wanted to bring forth a better deal than the next guy and not charge him $17,000 for Pepsi GMT, for example, right? I value the relationship I have with my clients over time, the ones that keep coming back year in, year out. I can always make up on something else, right? So those people do exist. You know, to say who they are, I'm not gonna label them to be trust fund babies or new buyers or new money. It wouldn't be fair to do so, plus I don't really like labeling people. But contrary to all belief, I can personally attest that a lot of my previous clients and new clients call me, they say, hey, I want this watch. I had a phone call right before I was making this episode. One of my clients of probably 10 years called me up. I was like, Roman, I got to give a gift. This guy wants a Pepsi GMT. I'm like, well, you know, they're trading damn near double their retail value, right? He's like, yeah, right today it's going to set you back like 17 grand. And the watch retails for 9,500, right? The guy's like, that's terrible. What do you think I should do? I'm like, listen, if you must buy him this watch, you got to bite the bullet and do what you got to do. It is what it is. At $17,000, I'm not making a whole lot of money, or any money for that matter, right? Guess what? He bought the watch because he needed that watch. That's one case scenario. And this isn't the guy that wasn't buying it for himself. He needed to give a gift of that particular watch to somebody, I guess, who was important, and that was it. Oftentimes, you have guys that want to outdo each other, you know? They want to show somebody who's is bigger. All right, as they say. They'll get out there and they'll say, well, you know what, guess what? I just got the latest and the greatest Bubba Watson that Richard Mille made, right? Or I am the first person to get this particular new Royal Oak. Or I am the first person to get the new limited edition Omega, and I pay full retail for it, knowing that down the line they'll probably be discounting, especially the gold ones, right? It's that pride, it's that stupid pride, and it is stupid. You know, and I tell my clients to their face when they call me to say, I must have this today, it just came out, I don't care what it's worth, and I tell them, you're overpaying. And when they say that I don't care that I'm overpaying, I'm okay with that. And there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just whatever floats your boat. If you want to be the first one on Instagram to post the latest watch or show it off to your friends or something of that nature, and you don't mind paying that type of premium, that's your prerogative. If there weren't those retail customers that are paying over list for these watches wouldn't be trading over list. They still end up on people's wrists, because if they didn't, the hype wouldn't be real and people would not be paying those type of monies for these type of watches. Hope that answers your question. Well, guys, that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, comment new questions below. Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those wonderful things that help my channel grow. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday.